Praise the Lord. Amen, amen, amen. Are you excited? It's going to be awesome tonight. I so always look forward to learning something new, and this is going to impact our now and our later with what we need to know. So please be seated tonight. I am so glad you guys came. Wow, this topic, this subject is going to be a serious eye-opener for us in the room and those of us online. And man, okay. Let's just go ahead and pray. Father, we thank you. We're so grateful. So grateful for this opportunity to have our hearts and our minds and our eyes open to the things that are going on around us that we might otherwise be completely unaware. Help us to comprehend and to understand and to apply what we are learning tonight about a world that could be completely unfamiliar to us. We thank you, Father, for bringing into our lives everything that we need to know and everything that will bring you more glory and honor and praise as we move forward in this time that we are living in. So we thank you and we honor you and we praise you today, Father. In Jesus' name. Amen, amen. Well, I want to just read two scriptures before we get started. And I tell you, oh, that made a big difference. Thank you. And one of them is going to be in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16 as they bring that up. But before we read that, I was spending some time with my grandson, Kenneth Lee Friendly III. Wow, it's amazing to be able to say that. And I was trying to find YouTube on my phone, and I just kept scrolling through because I have all these apps, half of them that I probably should get rid of because I'm not really using all of them. And I said, oh man, I can't seem to find YouTube. And so he said, let me help you, Gigi. And I think he was 3 or 4 at the time. He said, let me help you, Gigi. So he took my phone and he said, Siri, start YouTube. Right? And I said, I call him Bubba. I said, Bubba, I do not talk to her. Siri and we do not have a relationship at all. And see, he said, well, how come you don't like Siri? I said, I just don't want her in my business. So now his thing is, oh, you don't want her in your business? I said, no, I do not want her in my business. So there's so much about the technology that I am not ready for. I am just not ready to go there. I mean, I'm sure I would be forced to go there at some point in time because it keeps evolving. I didn't even text until my son went to college. I had the flip phone. I would still have a flip phone if people around me wouldn't keep moving and stuff. So there's so many reasons why we have to evolve. And this is also a part of the evolution. We have got to be wise. We have got to be skillful. So let's read this scripture. Look at that. You know it. It says, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Wise as serpents. I don't like snakes, but let me tell you, they have their way of getting to you if they want to get to you, right? So we're supposed to be wise. So let's take another look at, let's look at one more. Psalms 119:98. Ready? All right. You, talking about the Lord, through your commandments, make me wiser than my enemies, for they are ever with me. Technology isn't going anywhere. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. It can be used for something awesome, but it's so oftentimes, too often, used for something dark and sinister and against our children and our grandchildren. So we have to stay ahead of all of this as much as we possibly can. When my grandchildren are over, my little granddaughter, she's 2. She's been operating my older iPhone for as long as I can remember. I have her put her little fingerprints in it. You know what I mean? Cutest little thing. That's an old phone when you got to use your finger, right? But I'm sitting right there with her. All she wants is Elmo right now. So she finds Elmo on YouTube and she is good to go. She could sit there for hours and watch him. but I'm with her, right there by her, because one push of a button, you could be anywhere else. And so, but we cannot always be sitting right there next to them. But there are all kinds of safeguards that we can use to make sure that they stay protected. So tonight, our prayer is that the Lord will help us to be the wise, will help us to be ahead of our enemy. Our enemy is not always tangible. We cannot always see him. We cannot always know what he is doing, but God will give us the wisdom to stay ahead of him. So would you please stand to your feet and welcome our very own Lenny and Jolene as they come to share with us tonight. Praise the Lord. We're excited about you guys sharing this. Wow. Awesome. Ready? All right.
We are.
Are you going to need this?
Nope, we will not need that.
Wow. So it's a little nerve-wracking actually being up here. And we're accustomed to presenting, across almost the nation at times. What we want to start out with saying is, though we both represent law enforcement, I'm a detective with the Anchorage Police Department, working as a task force officer with the FBI Violent Crimes Against Children unit. And Jolene is actually an FBI agent working in the same unit. We are not here representing either of those agencies. We are here as Christians, we're here as servants. With the experience and the knowledge of what's going on in the world right now, I think between the two of us, we have at least 50 years of combined experience and education on crimes that involve, more than anything, children and sexual deviance and things like that. So the things that we're going to talk about today, statistically and per our experience, there's going to be people in the church that have experienced these things today, and it may bring some emotions, it may bring some recollections of past traumas that maybe we're working through. And it's okay if you need to step up and step out.
Yeah, we don't have anything that is like exceptionally graphic. But we are going to talk about some difficult topics, obviously, and some examples that may be difficult to hear, and even some of the things in the words of the offenders or the people that were perpetrating the crimes. So some of that may be difficult to hear. We just want to bring that up and just let folks know that that's a normal thing if you have these past hurts and these past traumas, and just to be aware of that. And if you feel that happening, it's okay to step out, and certainly, absolutely, close your eyes, pray, whatever you need to do in that situation to try to recenter yourself.
And we're going to be taking questions at the end. I'm a talker. I apologize from the beginning. My wife says it's because I'm Puerto Rican, and I can't deny it. So I've been kind of told to stand down a little bit. She's going to take more of the control in the presentation. But we will be taking questions, or if we need to, after the service, we can sit down, we can talk, or you can reach us privately, we can talk as well, if there's any things that that you feel need to be shared with us.
The primary things that we're going to be talking about tonight have to do with internet types of crimes like child enticement. We'll talk a little bit about child pornography as well. And then sextortion, which is kind of a new term that we're using to call different things that also encompass child pornography and child enticement. We are not planning to talk tonight about sex trafficking, which is kind of its own, that could be a whole thing on its own, so we're not really going to get into that tonight, but we can certainly answer questions about that at the end if you want. Speaking of technology, I'm going to have a lot of things in my hand. We definitely thank the media folks. They were able to put the presentation on my phone so I can switch slides from my phone, so I have a lot going on here. So we definitely thank them for all their help with this. But also, we didn't introduce ourselves. So you'll notice I have two different names on the screen. So Godin is my maiden name. That's the name that I use for work, and it's habit to type it, obviously. It's on Minnesota with sex offenders, with individuals who had committed sex crimes. And so, and then I transitioned into the FBI. So that's pretty much my background and my experience with this. And then most of my time here in Alaska, in fact, the majority of it, has been working these types of cases, working cases that involve children that are victims of crime. And that can be anything from kidnapping to internet crimes like we're talking about, sex trafficking. We work both sex trafficking of adults and minors. So a number of different types of cases that would involve a child. And everything that we're talking about tonight, the case examples that we have, the things we're going to talk about, these are all cases that have been, they've gone through the legal system, so they're out in the public. We can talk about them openly. You can go online and Google them and that kind of thing, and we're just going to talk about them and kind of put them in the perspective of what we're talking about tonight. We'll go through and we'll define what some of these crimes are, because I think that helps, that can help kind of frame it in our minds so we know exactly what it is and what we're looking for. We'll go through some examples, and then certainly we're also going to touch on it from a Christian perspective and from some of the things that we view and that we've seen, and how the enemy rears his head in some of these things. Do you have anything else to add to that? All right. Way too many things. I'm going to actually do this. So I want to do a quick poll first. And we actually realized I missed a few on here. And they're Facebook, if we've got some younger folks in the room, are probably like, we don't use Facebook anymore. That's for us, for the old people that are here. So some of these have the name on it, but is there anybody in here that can actually say, raise your hand and say, I know what all of these apps are. I've seen what they are. I know what they are. Some of the younger people might. See, look who's raising their hand. Yep, some of the younger people know what these apps are. I didn't know what many of them were, and I probably wouldn't know what they were if I didn't have to work with them. Oh, that would be great. Every day in the work that we do. We're going to talk about some of these. The one that is kind of specific to sex trafficking that we have up here that also deals a little bit with child enticement is Skip the Games, which is down below. But how about this one? Snapchat, yep. What's the one next to it? Tinder, I heard over here. And that one next to that? WhatsApp. On the end? Wicker. That's a messaging app that it's called has end-to-end encryption, which means that there is absolutely no way that anybody but the two people using it will know what is being said, and things disappear. You can set timers on it that they can last 10 seconds. You can send a message to that person, and once they open it in 10 seconds, that picture or that message disappears. And we have no way of accessing it. What about this one here? Discord? Yep. Kick kind of gives that one away. We see a lot with Kick in child pornography investigations in particular. How about the one in the middle? Instagram, yep. Bottom left, my left. Yeah, you're right, sorry. Twitter, yep. How about the W? Whisper. Yep, that's Whisper. And you can, we do a lot of online undercover type investigations where we either are posing as a parent, as an adult that has bad intentions, or posing as a child. And we've certainly done some investigations with Whisper where we will put something out there, maybe suggesting that we're a teenager or something like that, and very quickly we will have a number of responses back on Whisper. Facebook, which I said, that's kind of an old person app nowadays. How about the other one here? Telegram, yep, another messaging app. And then Plenty of Fish, which is a dating app. I forgot some. I forgot TikTok. I don't know how I could forget TikTok. And then I'm sure that if we were to poll the kids that are in the room, they could probably add about 10 more to this slide. But these are the types of different apps that we see and we work with pretty much on a daily basis. So just a little bit about what is different for kids today. I think many of us have had that conversation with a young person where they say, you don't understand, things are so different today, it's not like when you were a kid. And I used to think that, no, that's not true. But I really think there is a considerable amount of truth to that now, and in large part because of the internet. Many relationships are no longer in person. It is not unusual for us, if we're looking at a child's phone and we're looking at their social media that they have, for kids to have 2,000, 3,000 friends or followers in one of their applications. My Facebook, I am friends with anybody that I am friends with on there. I know I have a personal relationship with that person. I've had to spend time with them in person. I've had lunch with them. I work with them. They're friends with them. They're family. That is absolutely not the case anymore for kids online. They have a tremendous number of relationships with people that they have never met in person. They have no idea if the person that they're talking to really is a 12-year-old from Oklahoma. They have no idea about that. And so for them, relationships have a very different feel for kids these days than they did for many of us when we were younger. In addition to that, there's a lot of anonymity. You can be anybody online. Kids and adults, you can be absolutely anybody online. And then self-esteem. Unfortunately, we deal with a number of situations where a child's, in their mind, their self-esteem, their self-worth is based on the number of followers they have, the number of likes that they have. And I certainly know, and we probably have all had this situation, in our own social media, if we have a Facebook page or something like that, people tend to put out, they may put out that their life, everything about their life is absolutely perfect and they have no issues and no problems. And we know them, and we know that that is not what their real life is about. And it's very similar for kids when they're online. There's a persona that's put out there that in order to be cool, in order to be the popular kid, that this is what you have to have, this is what you have to dress like, this is what you have to do, these are the number of followers you need to have, these are the social media apps that you have to have, even if mom and dad say you shouldn't. You can find ways to hide them on your phone in secret places on your phone. And so it is very different from that perspective. About the last?
So, desensitized to sex and nudity and that our bodies are no longer sacred. We're an older generation, and I think it's happened as every generation has come through, that, we're shocked at what's happening, what people are wearing or not wearing today, right? From back in the day when I was younger to now. We have come to the point where nudity literally means nothing now, especially for children. I think as parents, we would be just shocked if we truly got into the kids' phones and found the hidden folders that they have and see that they have naked pictures of themselves and they're actually sending these naked pictures to their friends or people that they just meet online that are requesting this. It goes to, bodies are just not sacred anymore. And they're not fearful because they're safe in their house. They're taking these pictures in the bathroom. They're taking these pictures in their bedroom. They're taking these pictures at their friend's house. They're not taking these pictures out on the street. They're not taking these pictures in the clubs. They're safe in their house. There's no boogeyman in their house that's going to hurt or touch them, so they feel safe, and they'll do this. But we can't tell you how many times we've talked with parents in our investigations, Christian parents, parents with morals, parents that, really taught their kids there's nothing bad going on in their home, and all of a sudden, boom, it blows up in their face that their kid has been taking these pictures and sending them out. Kids that are doing good in school, in sports, getting good grades, getting great grades, have, great plans for themselves in lives, and yet they're still slipping into this part of the life. The focus on money and trends, that has become just who we are as a nation, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, especially when we're talking about how the enemy's using this. But all of this right here are the key components to human trafficking of children as well, especially the trends and the focus on money. One day we'll probably talk about human trafficking, but I can say right now, kids are seeking traffickers. Traffickers are not hunting the kids anymore. And we can talk about that on another occasion. But it also falls into this because the predators that are doing online enticement are the same predators that are doing the trafficking. I mean, it's the same deviant desires that they have. So it's similar.
And as we talk about this, we certainly are not immune from this at all. We have had family members, young family members that have been victimized online, that have been sought out online, and have also voluntarily sent out their own images to boyfriends or individuals they thought were boyfriends or that type of thing. So I certainly don't want to give the message that we have this all figured out, because we don't.
And this is after we talked to them and told them we are looking for you online. And then we're finding them and coming back to the family and saying, seriously? You knew I was doing this same job. How are you? Just to show we're not immune either.
All right, so I want to go through just really quickly what some of the definitions are of the types of crimes that we're going to talk about involving online. The first one is child enticement, and this is when an adult lures or persuades a child online to engage in some type of sexual activity, either online, they have them do things online, or meet up to do something sexual, or to produce child pornography. The statutes still call it child pornography. We call it, we've got an abbreviation for everything, CSAM, child sexual abuse material, because that's what it is. It is sexual abuse material. So you'll probably hear us tonight kind of flip back and forth between calling it child pornography or CSAM, but that's really, they mean the same thing. And child enticement can involve all ages. The typical ages I think that we tend to see are about 11 on up, but we certainly have had investigations and known of cases where it's happened to much younger children and to boys and girls, not just girls. I mentioned child pornography or CSAM. Images or videos that somebody is having a child take, or that they're taking of a child, anybody under the age of 18. The age of consent in Alaska is 16. That means nothing for this crime at all. If there are naked pictures of genitalia, Lenny's going to talk a little bit more about what is not, but not breasts, genitalia, and that child is 16 or 17 years old, even though the age of consent where they can say, I want to be in a sexual relationship with this person, does not matter. It is still considered child pornography. And then within this, we have production. That's the making of the images. If somebody asks a child to take pictures, or somebody is taking pictures of a child. Distribution, that is where you have that person sending it. We certainly have situations where children are sending it to each other. That's not a federal crime. It could be a state crime. If you have a 14-year-old girl that takes pictures that would fall into this category, sends them to another 14-year-old boy, or sends them to a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old boy, that could be a crime where they could be charged. Whether or not they will is a whole nother story, but the distribution is the trading or sending of those images, and then possession is just having them in your phone, or that type of thing.
So I'll try not to climb on my soapbox on this one, because this one really, it kills me. Child erotica. Child erotica is legal in the United States. Those two words should never, right, be together in any sentence. That is art. That is considered art. We cannot charge anything against child erotica. And it's, I'm sorry.
Child erotic.
Erotica?
Explain.
Okay, I'll explain what child erotica is. Child erotica is when you take a child of any age, it doesn't matter their age, and pose them in a sexual manner, even to the point where they're undressed. As long as their genitals are not exposed, they can be posed in the most sexual manner that you want to, and that is considered art. This is where our country has come to, where now that is a legal thing, where we cannot charge anybody with that. The other part of that too is they are now creating anime that is so lifelike that we have a difficult time seeing it as anime. It looks like they're real children, and that's and it's what would be child pornography. In other words, it's these videos of children being raped or having sex, and it's almost impossible for us to differentiate between, is it anime or is it a real human that's happening here. That is also legal. It cannot be prosecuted in our country. So we wonder, and we'll talk about this later on, it's no wonder actually why we're in the state that we're in. We've opened up these doors in our country for this to happen. And our country actually is a little bit more prudish than other countries, because if you go to other countries, child pornography is actually legal to possess and have there.
Sextortion. I mentioned that early on. Sextortion isn't its own crime. You can't charge somebody with sextortion. But typically what happens in it is where you have somebody threatens to distribute a child's private or sensitive material. That would mean pictures that they have of themselves. Maybe they have photos of themselves where they're partially undressed or completely undressed, or pictures of their genitalia. They threaten that they're going to send those out to other people. They're going to send them out to all their friends on their social media or whatever it might be, in order for that perpetrator to get more. So they'll say, it may start out as a boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship. The child may think that. So they take pictures. They take pictures and they send them to the individual. That individual now has these, and he says, if you don't keep sending me more, then I'm going to send these pictures to everybody, all of your Instagram followers, everybody on your other social media. Then your family's going to see them, because you do have that Facebook page that grandma and auntie and everybody else is part of, and they're going to see them too. So that's where the idea of sextortion comes in. Like I said, we don't charge sextortion. It would be child pornography or extortion or something like that. The other thing that happens with this violation is the perpetrator can also threaten to harm. One of the things that they'll do is they'll threaten to harm the child's family. They'll threaten to harm child's friends or other people as well, in order to get that child to keep making videos or sending photos to them. And if they don't comply, we certainly have had situations. Thankfully, a lot of times these guys are just talk, but we certainly have had situations where a child does stop. The child goes to mom and dad and says, nope, I'm not, this is what's going on, and that they don't send anything else, and then the individual does actually send all of that out there, which you can imagine. That would be horrifying as an adult. Imagine being a 12, a 13-year-old and having 14, any age, and having to go back to school if that happened. And so this is where you may see in the news situations of suicide and kids wanting to hurt themselves, is absolutely when you have this type of thing going on.
And that, I think, is the worst of the crime in sextortion, is the fact that these children are having to carry this burden in their hearts, and they can't talk to anybody about it. They can't talk to mom. They can't talk to dad. Sometimes they're forced to then do the same to their own younger siblings because they're threatened in such a manner. And at the end, an adult couldn't deal with this type of trauma. How is a child 9, 10, 11, 12 years old going to deal with this? And they end up committing suicide. And nobody knew. They just didn't dare tell anybody. They felt it was their sin, their burden, their fault for having fallen prey to these manipulators. And when it's all said and done, nobody knew.
We're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but we're certainly seeing, I don't have a number for it, but weekly, absolutely weekly, more reports of this over and over and over again. So this is absolutely happening.
It's gotten to the point where sometimes it can't even be investigated because it is so prolific and so widespread, and sometimes they're from other countries, sometimes they're people that we just will never be able to identify, and we just have to say, I'm sorry. And the one thing that we didn't say, that we should have said at the beginning, what is on the internet will be on the internet forever. You can never delete what is on the internet. We can wipe computers, we can wipe phones, we cannot wipe out the internet. It will be there forever.
And certainly, we're going to talk at the end about just as parents, as aunts, as uncles, grandparents, what we can do and give you some resources for that as well. But if you have a young person come to you and say that this is happening, whether it's any of these violations, and they have something on their phone, the number one thing, as much as your first instinct is, oh my gosh, I don't want to see this has to go away, this has to be deleted, do not delete it. We need that. And so I can't tell you the number of times that parents will come to us and tell us about what they saw, and then we'll ask about the phone, and they said, oh, we wiped the phone. Then we need that. In order, for law enforcement to do something, we're going to need that. As hard as that's going to be for you to not hit delete on there.
And that's human instinct. It's not parents trying to destroy evidence. It's, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing that could be happening in my child's life right now. I got to get rid of it. And it's just instinct, and you just delete it. And once it's deleted, it's very difficult to retrieve it from the actual phone or computer or whatever it is. It'll be on the internet, but we may not be able to get it back from the internet.
When we're talking about what ages may be targeted online, it really is any age. The majority that we typically see, though, are 10, 11 and up. However, the youngest child enticement type case, child pornography case that I've seen where a perpetrator sought out a little girl online, she was 7. And this happened, certainly child pornography investigations much younger, but this particular situation was mom and dad gave this little girl their old iPhone, which just happens, we all do it. I mean, I've done it as well. They didn't have any type of parental controls on it. And this little girl had seen mom make Snapchat accounts, had seen mom make all these different accounts. She made her own Snapchat account, and within 48 hours, she had been contacted by multiple men, adult men, but at least 4, it might have been 5 of them had actually had her make videos for them. So how quickly that can happen. And mom got the phone and she saw it. First instinct, delete, delete, delete. But it can happen, because like you guys we were all talking about, that little kids know how to do stuff. Our grandkids can find stuff on our phones way faster than we can. And they watch us. They're magnets to this kind of stuff. And so they can create accounts, and they can create an email account in order to create an account kind of thing, which we have to do on many of these. And 2-factor authentication, having to get codes, they can do that just as easily as we can as adults.
So the legal, right, what we deal on the legal side of what we're looking at, these are all deviants that have sexual desire for children, whether it's pedophilia, when it's a sexual attraction to prepubescent children, or the predator mindset of it doesn't matter how old the kid is, toddler on up, they're sexually attracted to children. That is always going to be the number one focus. It's why sometimes it's easy to catch them, because that addiction they can't get rid of, and they'll never delete. They'll delete from the computer, but they'll always store it somewhere else where we can usually find it. And then the other part of that is also the money that they can make. I think it's said right now that pornography is one of the biggest industries right now, making profits, billions and billions and billions of dollars in pornography. Well, child pornography is even more difficult to find than regular pornography, and it's like the elite of all pornography. So think about how much money that is making. That nobody's going to make. Nobody's going to tell you how much money that is, because there's nobody tallying that. They don't want to be known as that. But if pornography, regular pornography, is a multi-billion-dollar industry, then child pornography is going to top that as well. And then the other part is just kids being kids and being curious and sexual. There's no denying that, kids are human beings and they have sexual feelings as well, and that they can also be predators and can also be exploiting kids their own age. Mm-hmm. But as a Christian, we truly know what is the cause of this. We can call it deviance, we can call it mental health. It's actually demonic in nature. It is the most evil thing that you can think of. It destroys lives in so many platforms. It devastates us in every aspect that you can think of. It's the most, I mean, this is the most precious thing we have besides salvation is our children. And this is what it was tailored to do. Destroy our children, and through destroying our children, destroy us, destroy the family. So we know the true author of what this is, and it ain't just mental health.
I want to just mention online gaming because that most kids game, many kids game on their PlayStations, on their Xboxes, and this certainly is a way also for them to be targeted. If most online gaming systems have the ability, it's not like back in the day when you're playing on Atari or Nintendo and you're playing the person sitting next to you, that's who you're playing. It's not like that anymore. You could be playing somebody on the other side of the world. Absolutely. And the gaming systems have an ability for you to communicate with those people as well that you're gaming with. And it can be in a group setting or it can be in a one-to-one setting. And we certainly have seen situations where younger kids and teenagers as well have been targeted through gaming systems, where it may start out as just a friendship where they're talking, and then in this particular case, this little boy was kind of moved off, not kind of, he was moved off of the gaming system onto actual texting, and then asked to make videos and send pictures to this individual. So it isn't just sitting on your phone, it isn't just being on an actual computer or a tablet, it can also happen through a gaming system as well. So just raising awareness to that as well. I want to talk about, I'm going to walk through one case in particular tonight in a little bit more detail, and if, for those of you who attend Lighthouse, the pastor has mentioned this case a couple of times. He used the word creepy, was one of the words that he used in talking and referring to some of the chats and the audio and stuff that we have from this case. So I'm not going to go through everything about the case, but I'm going to go through it in enough detail, I think, to show you how quickly this can happen, how quickly it can go from initiating contact with a child to grooming that child. And grooming is a term that we use to talk about what somebody will do to make a child feel comfortable, make them feel loved, make them feel liked, make them feel special in order to get that child to do what the adult, I'm going to call, it's not always an adult, but for the purposes of this, an adult, do what that adult wants them to do. So how quickly that can happen, and then also how they will also say and do things to remove that child kind of from the sense of family, remove that child, encourage them to keep secrets and to do things like that. So this was a case that has already been through the system. He's been convicted and everything. So all of this is out there. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the entire case. You can certainly Google it to get more detail. But this is an individual named Christopher Carmichael. He was 55 years old at the time when we had contact with him. He was from Bethel, Alaska, and he was the principal of an elementary school in Bethel. He had been a principal there since 2014, but he had also been a teacher out in rural Alaska for many, many years. So there had been a few prior reports to law enforcement regarding Chris. However, none of them really reached that level where anything could be done about it. It was always kind of brushed off as an accident where he, brushed up. A little girl said that he touched her breast, and it was brushed off as though he brushed off, bad choice of words, where he brushed against her, and it wasn't an intentional thing. There was always kind of an excuse or a reason to justify what had happened, and as I mentioned before, like we have, in order for law enforcement to try to charge somebody or convict somebody, it has to reach a certain threshold. So it never got there. And so there were some concerns, but it never went any farther beyond just concern. In 2019, however, there was a teen who, I believe she was 16 at that time, 15 or 16 at that time, who reported to her mom that when she was younger, when she had been going to that elementary school, that Chris had touched her. Chris had touched her, and he had done this at the school and in his office in different places. And he had taken a very special interest in her and her family. Her father was not in the picture at that time, and he had really kind of taken on a fatherly role, which, and I don't mean any judgment in this at all. I certainly don't mean it to come across this way, which the mother welcomed, because she wanted her kids to have a male role model, a male in her children's life, and so she welcomed that. And after all, he's the elementary school teacher or principal, so why should she be worried about that? He had told her not to talk about their what he called relationship, and also had her call him daddy. Which is certainly not the first case where we have seen that. Bethel Police Department investigated this. Initially, they reached out to us. We had a phenomenal lieutenant at the Bethel Police Department who posed as that little girl, we're just going to call her Victim A, posed as Victim A online and was communicating with Carmichael. But he wouldn't quite cross that line. Couldn't quite cross that line to where it was criminal and something could be done. But there were things in the messages that he would send that certainly were concerning. IWU, not the kids. What does that mean? Somebody said it. I want you. Yep. ILU. I love you. I miss you. Yep. So, things like that he was saying in the messages to this little girl, to the lieutenant posing as the little girl. She worked in things about the previous things that he had done to her when she was younger, that the little girl had disclosed that he had done to her when she was younger. He didn't deny them, but he also didn't admit them. So again, he's kind of walking that line. Very vague, very guarded, and he kept saying they had to be careful online. So she reached out to the FBI and contacted us and asked if we had any suggestions. This is the kind of stuff that we do all the time. Asked if it was something that we could take over as a federal case and see what we could do with it. She was able to introduce her 12-year-old cousin from Anchorage, her 12-year-old cousin Jaylene from Anchorage. And the premise was that Jaylene was having trouble at home, things that many kids would say. Mom and Dad don't understand her. They don't let her do anything. They treat her like she's a little kid, that kind of thing. That was the premise of what he put out, or what she put out to Chris about Jaylene. So she put it out there, and he said, you have my number, have her reach out to me. So I don't have the date on this one, but the next day, so this is a case back in 2019 that just got sentenced a few months ago. November 30th of 2019, I reached out posing as Jaylene, the cousin from Anchorage. I texted him that night alone. That night we texted for about an hour. It was mostly small talk. It really wasn't anything inappropriate. It was just kind of feeling each other out on how, like, likes, dislikes, family, that type of thing. And then he concluded the text that night and said that he was going to always be there for her, and her words would always be safe with him. That's how it was ended that night. And he said, "You aren't alone anymore, good night." That was the last text for that night. So that's the 30th. The next day, he asks if she deleted her conversation from the previous night. If it's innocent, why would you need to delete that conversation from the previous night? He then, on the next day, there had been no sexual conversation the previous night. But that next day, he says, he starts to ask her in a kind of a subtle way at first, what have you done sexually with other boys? To kind of broach that topic with her. And that's how kind of the sexual conversation started. Asked her to describe it in detail, etc. Again, told her to delete the messages. From that point forward, 100% of the chats were completely sexual in nature. It took 24 hours in order for it to go from small talk to completely sexual in nature with what he believed to be a little girl. I'm going to go, some of these are difficult to see, so hold on one second here. I'm going to read them. These are some of the text messages if you had difficulty seeing him. So these are some of his messages. He says, I'll help you more in the future. Remember, our stuff stays here, add and delete. So we're on December 2nd. We're 3 days later. He's at school, being a principal. I'm supposed to technically be at school, and the texting is continuing. He says, I'll wait to hear from you so you don't get in trouble. So I don't get in trouble. It's really for him not to get into trouble. If I won't text you until you do it first. And then he says, not a word, okay? I don't know if it's going to play. Let me back up for a second, and I'll kind of set the stage for this. So we have a couple audio clips in here. On that day at school, he wanted to talk. He wanted to talk to Jaylene. So I called him with my not adult voice, and so it was a 9-minute conversation. These are just like 20 or 30-second snippets of that, just to show you some of the things that he would say in order to bring about kind of that grooming process that we talked about. I don't know, do I need to click it? Maybe? It may not work. Just 1 second for technical difficulties. In this call, he starts it out by saying, you're not stupid. He talks to her about how mature she is. He's doing that building up of her self-confidence, making her feel special, helping her to feel comfortable with him, and indicating that he understands her and other people don't. That's really kind of the gist of this first call. I can keep going if you don't think it's going to. I'll go to the next one. They worked the other day. That's all right. We'll keep.
You know, when you mentioned that,
that's okay. We can keep
that your dad's not in your picture, very much. I wish I could just adopt you and take you. You are not. Listen to me. You are never stupid. You are a very bright, very smart girl. I can tell by the way you write. I can tell by the way that you share. You're confident, and you know what you enjoy, and you're not shy about sharing it. What I was trying to explain is, I have to be very careful, and so we have to treat you like you're 18 if we chat. So if I mention women, to suck you.
So in that
Sorry. I think we have an echo. Hello. I can see why the pastor was playing with this. Is that better? Okay. So you heard that voice, right? What did you hear in that voice? Wasn't there like an evil? I mean, you can hear it. You can feel it when he's talking. You can hear the demons inside are the ones that are actually saying those words and using him as a vessel. And y'all may be wondering what I was doing in this case. We have this working agreement. Jolene is great at being the case agent and organizing things and just, making sure everything's going well. And then I am the guy that talks to these individuals at the end and get them to confess to all the things that they have done. So God has definitely blessed us with the right tools because, like I said, I'm the talker. They actually call me the perv whisperer at work, which I don't know how to feel about that. No, don't write that down. No, that's not one of the questions we'll be answering at the end. But no, the glory is to God, really. I don't know how he gave me the skills, but it is what I do. That's what I'm known for. So go ahead.
No,
sorry.
We do work most of these cases together. We're blessed in that we were able to work cases together. We sit 4 feet from each other in the office. And a lot of this chatting in these cases happens at home, and I'm incredibly, incredibly thankful that I have a husband who gets it and understands what I'm doing when I'm sitting on the couch next to you doing this kind of a thing, and he gets it, and vice versa, because he does this as well.
And what's crazy about our relationship is when she gets what she needs, that nexus that she needs to, now we have a charge, we both celebrate, which is kind of, it's I guess creepy in its own way, kind of, right? Like, oh my God, you got him, yes. Yes, those, you did what you needed to do, and you got him to say the horrible things that he needed to say to you, and, we high five, and then she keeps on talking. Nobody could understand it, really, if you don't work this.
I think there was another audio to it, which I don't know if you can't get it, that's fine.
When you mentioned that your dad's not in your picture, not in the picture very much, I wish I could just adopt you and take you.
Yeah.
I know that's very naughty, but I would like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have a new friend now, don't you?
I do.
And are you happy about that?
Yeah. I really like talking to you.
Good. Now, here's the thing. You can text me pretty much whenever you want, but I'm never going to initiate. I'm never going to start a text with you because I never know if your mom is sitting next to you or what's going on. So you text me whenever you can or whenever you want, and I'll answer you, okay?
Okay.
Whenever I can.
Will you be...
Yeah.
Was, I'm going to put in the text messages that I'm 18. So I'm going to talk about wanting to do this thing to you as an 18-year-old. And he said, I'm going to do that because if anybody ever sees these messages, then I can say, I thought you were 18 years old. So that's going to come back a little bit later. He said that as well. But you heard in there, he talked about kind of starting to set up the secrets, and he's not going to text her because he doesn't know if mom is sitting right there. So we're kind of starting down that, or already well down that road of secrets and keeping things private. And I think there's one more audio.
Just like this.
No, I imagine not. And again, this has got to be our secret because you know what did happen to me in the chemo, right?
Are we both be in trouble, I think. But yeah, I don't want anybody to know.
No. No.
I won't tell anybody. If you don't tell, and I won't tell.
No. No, I'm not going to say a word.
Secret.
So I can't do that very much, but during this whole day, if you want to.
At this point, it is all talk. It is all just texting. And then he indicates that he's going to be coming to Anchorage. We didn't know at the time, but this was already a well-planned trip. He had a family thing happening in Anchorage, and he was going to be coming to Anchorage. So this is where we may potentially, at that time, we thought we may actually have an enticement case. He's coming to Anchorage to actually have contact with Jaylene. And so it could also be, he talked about coming to see her and then possibly taking videos together. So if you think about what I talked about before with those other possible charges, we might have it would be an attempted child pornography charge because he's not actually going to be able to do it.
And we were ready. We were ready for him. we had quite a team ready for him. And in our experience, kind of one of the perks is when we walk up to them and they're expecting the little girl, and this grown man shows up with the badge and the gun, and then watching their eyes start to flutter and their legs start to go as they start to faint when the reality has set in, right? That's a little perk that God gives us, I think. She doesn't enjoy it as much as I enjoy it, but man, that makes my day when they start passing out on me, so.
So these are some
little
examples
things.
of some more of the text messages. They're hard to read. So he said, I say in the first one, when are you coming to Anchorage? He says tomorrow. I say K. I'm green. He's blue. He says, wouldn't that be awesome? And I respond, question mark, question mark. And then he says, to see each other meet. And then we're on December 2nd. Remember, this started on November 30th. We are not very far into this. The chats become progressively more graphic, and this is hours and hours of chats. This is not just a few minutes here and there, hours and hours of chats. They become more graphic, reminds her how much he loves her and he's just there to help her. And then again, delete your messages, delete your messages. Let me go to these. So the chats continue. These are just some excerpts from the chats. I had mentioned that 18-year-old thing before. He throws that into the messages. He says, do you like sharing with daddy? Yeah, I do. Good girl. He asks where she lives and if it's close to the hotels downtown because that's where he's going to be staying and if she could meet him. We confirm that he actually is on a flight. He's coming to Anchorage. The chats continue. Again, reminds her to keep deleting. He says, you are never alone now. I say, I know. He says, now you have me for support, for help. And then he says, how far is the walk from your home to Fifth Avenue? He says, let's meet Carlick and Fifth. And I say, not that far. And then I question, wait, do you mean meet at the mall? I'm thinking he says Fifth Avenue Mall. And he says, I know where Fifth and Carlick are. Good place to connect. These are a little hard to see as well. He says, I have to have you back by 9:45 or so. I had said that my mom worked nights. She got home from work about 10:15. So I say, yeah. He said it would be so. And then he says, yummy, a dream come true.
And I don't know if you can see the actual writing, but it's C-U-M, not C-O-M-E.
The meeting didn't actually happen in this case. I mentioned he was coming to Anchorage for some real, like a legitimate thing with family and was only here for a day. He ended up going back the next day, very apologetic that the meeting couldn't actually happen. But the case is not over. So the chats continue, the calls continue. He says he's coming to Anchorage again on the 21st. Again, a lot of talk about being careful and making sure that nobody's done anything. He talks to me. I bring up my friend, victim A, who's in Bethel, and he acknowledges to me that he did touch her breast. We've got a crime. We've got a crime now. So that's where, I mean, we were already kind of well on our way, and we had some things we could potentially charge, but we have a definite crime now. Again, told me to keep referring to myself as 18, so that if anyone did get into the messages, I could say, well, I misunderstood.
And just so you know, in this state, if a child discloses sex abuse, if we don't have something that corroborates what the child says, we cannot prosecute the person. As a matter of fact, if a suspect confesses to child abuse and the kid says it didn't happen, even though we believe the suspect, if we can't corroborate what he says, we can't charge that either. That's how the laws work against us. Not like Texas. Texas is all right. They're like, she said that? Okay, let's go get them. We need a little bit more Texas up in Alaska.
In this particular case, victim A was doing really well at this point, and she agreed to do a recorded phone call with him. So we went to Bethel. We met with her. We were with her when she called him. It was heartbreaking as she shows up. I mean, she's a 16-year-old little girl who's holding a stuffed animal as she's making this call to him. But she did that, and he admitted to a number of things on that phone call. She referenced him touching her breasts at school. He told her to stop talking about it and to remember the lesson. And what he is referring to is when she was in elementary school, they had an internet safety class where the police talked about how they could see everything that was happening online. So that was his thing. Remember the lesson, so stop talking about it. The police are going to be listening. Told her what to bring to Bethel. He didn't realize she was in Bethel at the time. Told her what to bring to Bethel in order to make the video. Indicated that he had brought a thumb drive for the purpose of that recording. And then he talked about from the very first day we met, we have loved each other. And then described his plans to meet with her. He also said, when you were talking about me touching on Messenger, he said, I'm sure people read that, and I'm sure that they are very concerned about it. And if you could do me a favor at some point when we're chatting on there, you could say, you now remember that was an accident, and you say you are sorry. I know that's not true, but could you do that to help protect me? So he was doing a number of things to get her to change her story, but we got a number of confessions out of that statement as well, or out of that recording as well. After this call, we went to his house, we did a search warrant, we arrested him, and then we found the thumb drive that he said he had for that purpose that night was in his pocket. We also found a thumb drive in his house that had child pornography on it as well. Eventually, Lenny did the interview, and eventually he admitted to some attraction to children, but for the most part, really minimized everything. Tried to say she was 18, I thought she was 18, all the things that we knew that he was going to do. But eventually he was arrested that night and then eventually brought to Anchorage and convicted and such. So I brought this case up. This is the one that the pastor had heard about at our Citizens Academy. We did a little bit longer presentation on it, but just to show you the lengths that somebody will go to in order to try to groom a child, to have them keep secrets, and how quickly it can happen, how very, very quickly it can happen. It's terrifying when you realize how quickly that can happen.
And looking at it big picture now, going back to the spiritual realm, so many kids had already disclosed. They had already said, this is what this teacher did to me. And nothing got done. It just, years went by and he continued to get empowered and continued to do more and more and more. I mean, the enemy, he tries to protect his own, right? And he does a fairly good job of it until God says enough, and then shines his light on it, and then there's no more hiding. And that's exactly what happened with this man. I mean, we look at it, right? Our partners at the job, not many of them are Christian, and if they are, they're not like the true believers, right? They believe, but they don't believe. And we're always looking at it as law enforcement, but me and Jolene, we look at the bigger picture of the spiritual realm and how the enemy is just moving and weaving and doing his own little things and trying to protect and keep hidden. And in all of our cases, we're always praying over these cases. We're always asking God to guide us. We're always asking God to shine his light, because the truth is, this is what's going to happen, is he'll continue to do this and nobody will. He's a principal. He's been a principal for years. He was a respected member of the community. The own school that they reported to, superintendents and above, said, no, that can't be happening. They believed the man over a child. And even though everything was, grooming is not illegal, but it's there. You can't be blind to it, you know. Nobody wanted to believe it. So we did a similar presentation to a youth group in a church that they asked us to present in. And we asked this question, and there were about 25 more girls than boys, but we asked them, how many have been contacted online, asked to send naked photos and videos of yourself? How many do you think? At least 75% said they had been contacted numerous times for naked pictures and videos. And I'm sure it probably would have been all of them, but some just we're not gonna say that. And we didn't ask who actually did send it, but that's the norm. This is not unusual. That is the norm.
I mentioned before about sextortion. I won't go back over the definition, but just a little bit more about how these cases look and how kids are lured into some of these things online. And you've seen some of it already, but it's a lot of flattery. It's a lot of compliments. It can be to give the perception of a romantic relationship. There can be something offered in terms of something financial as well, as like a new phone or clothes or getting your hair done or nails done or things like that. There can also be threats, not just the threats of I'm going to send out a photo, but I'm going to hurt somebody in your family. It sometimes is an adult posing as a teenager initially. In fact, many cases with adults, that's what it is. They'll take other pictures off the internet of other teenagers and use those to have that person think they're in a relationship with another teenager, only to find out that it is not actually another teenager. And then they can bring in they can extort or force that child to bring in another friend or sibling into it as well. Typical scenario, may have a teen girl chatting with a male online. She thinks she's in a relationship. He asks her for pictures. She sends pictures. He then tells her she has to keep making those kind of pictures or videos, or something bad's going to happen. He's going to start sending them out. And that one of the things that I've certainly noticed in these cases is different than some of the other cases is oftentimes what they will do as well is ask the child to do something sexual, but something that's very demeaning. And that is absolutely 100% intentional, because the more demeaning, the more graphic that act is that they may have a child do on video or take a picture of, is solely for the purpose of controlling that child. Because it's one thing to have a picture of naked breasts out there. It's a whole other thing to have incredibly graphic, demeaning things that would go out to all of your classmates at middle school or at high school or to your grandparents or something like that.
So the pastor has been teaching us and talking about curses and blessings, and that's literally kind of the realm that me and Jolene work in. And one of the ones that he quoted was Deuteronomy 28:32. Your sons and daughters shall be given to another people, and your eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all day long, and there shall be no strength in your hand. And that is the literal feeling that all of these parents and family members feel when they're devastated by their children having been sexually exploited or sexually abused. And me and Jolene, we've always sat down and talked about why this occurs. We know the monsters are out there. We know that the enemy's out there. But why is it so easy for it to happen with homes that are stable, that are Christian, that are responsible, that there's morals, there's not abuse in the home, and again, all the things that we mentioned. And we're both old enough to know how the decline in our country has become, but this is what we've come to understand. Our country is cursed. We've cursed ourselves. You know, the pastor talked about you can be predisposed to a curse, but until you activate that curse isn't going to take effect. Well, we have activated it time and time and time again. I talked about child erotica, how, you know, the courts determine that's okay. We can allow people that have these feelings and desires to look at this, to possess it. Just don't carry it any further. Don't carry it any further. What does that even mean? Don't carry it any further. The fact that you have this desire, you've carried it already too far. And so we've allowed that. We've allowed so many other things to occur in our country. This country's God has become, and here's where I'm getting on my soapbox and no longer talking as law enforcement. Our country's God has become the right to freedom and entitlement. That's who our God has become for many of us, for the government in particular, right? What started out in this country as, you know, the rights and freedom and justice, it was always based on God, by God, in the name of God, right? I mean, in God we trust. The origin was truly a God-delivered origin for this country, which is why our country became what we became, and now we're on the decline. So this sense of entitlement and this sense of opinions. Social media has not done any help for us whatsoever, because now everybody has to give you their opinion. For however stupid or smart or wise or whatever you want to call it, we have to now hear their opinion. And God forbid you disagree with them, right? Then, you know, now you're the enemy. And God forbid you actually believe in morals and you actually believe in God and you start saying this online, all of a sudden the world has come down on you as, you're the oppressor. So that is who this generation's God has become. And we're really focused on that. In 1 Corinthians 10:23, it says, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. In the NIV, it says, all things are lawful to me, but not all things are helpful or edify. And that's something that now we're denying that. Now the mentality is, if you want to do it, if you feel like doing it, and that's how you identify, then we're going to protect you. Well, who are you protecting? We're protecting the very deviants that are behind this who are pushing it forward, because every time they gain a step, every time a law is passed that protects them, it's one more step that they have to do this in front of the world. And it be legal. And they are allowed to do this. One of the things that we do as a family, right? So I always tell people, know who you're putting in positions of authority. It's our responsibility. It's not our neighbor's responsibility. It's not a political party's responsibility. It's our responsibility as Christians and as citizens of the country to know, who are we putting in these positions? Who is going to be this judge that's going to make this decision that says, okay, well, child erotica is legal. Let's make child pornography legal now too. I mean, they're not touching children. It's just an image on a screen, right? Know who they are. Be involved. Be involved. It's not about a color. It's not about it's about what's morally right. And that's our responsibility. If we fail to do that, then we can't complain when the enemy's pushing his people into positions of authority who are making decisions for us that we can't change afterwards. Now we're like, how did that happen? The pastor was talking about this politician who wants to make it a law where if you abandon a child within a couple of days
Of birth.
And the child dies, it's not a homicide. Okay. I could see where he gets carried away, because, man, I want to get carried away. Okay, so now, this is something that I've had to talk to parents time and time again, and in our position, we have to be careful how we talk, right? Because we just can't start preaching to people as law enforcement officers. But it's not difficult to, as I'm talking with a family and they're and I'm seeing whatever's going on in the family, that there are open doors that are in your home that, that you allowed. So one of the things that I have found to be the most common part of why these things occur, how the enemy is able to just walk into your home and touch your most precious belonging, your children, is we teach our children certain rules and certain laws, right? And morality. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that. Don't be running around naked, don't be doing these bad things. But then we don't apply those same rules to ourselves, right? So in our home, we're saying, don't do this, but then we're doing it. We're the ones posting, online, and we're the ones that are connecting with people that we know are not good, or we're watching shows that maybe we should not be watching. So what are the kids learning from us? Okay, so there are rules, but when you feel like breaking those rules, it's okay to break those rules. So you tell me, don't lie to you, don't do this, but you go and lie, you break these rules, I can do the same thing, right? And the enemy fosters that. And our society encourages that, right? I mean, the day that I learned that a child can go see a doctor, and if the child says, don't tell my mom and dad anything, the doctor has to obey the child and not tell their parent anything about their child. The day that I found that out, I was like, well, then, I mean, what's the use, right? I mean, how is that possible? So parents are constantly shocked when they find out that their children are involved in this, have fallen prey to this, have been seduced into doing these type of things. But if they were to look at themselves first, if they were to look, first of all, some parents, some homes, ungodly. Not that they're bad, They just don't have a God, right? So we know you're kind of prey to whatever comes about. Hey, that's kind of the law of the West. Bad things are going to happen. We know that there's an enemy. He's going to walk into your home, and if you're not protected, there's nothing we could do about that. But how about us Christians, those that believe, those of us that know, this is our battle. This is where now we have to understand. The enemy works through deceit and ignorance, right? God, His Spirit gives us wisdom, gives us insight, and gives us knowledge, the opposite of what the enemy is presenting. I can say that part of it can be cultural. I could talk about my culture. It's something that I shared in the men's group. I'm Puerto Rican. I come from a very highly sexualized culture where beauty and that man is, men were oversexed, and if we have affairs, it's kind of what men do, and you kind of overlook it, and when it happens and it gets found out, you kind of, okay, well, I won't ever do it again. And it happens again and again, right? That's my culture. That's how I was raised. That's how I believed. That does no help. It doesn't help whatsoever. If that's how I believe and that's what I teach my children and that's what they're seeing in my home, then when it happens to them, I'm just going to have to applaud it and say, okay, I guess you followed my footsteps. Something we have to acknowledge if that's part of our culture, right? Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. As Christians, many Christians, I've seen this happen where we want the church to train our children on how to be a Christian. That's apparently the church's and the pastor's responsibility and those that teach Sunday school and whatever, but we don't want to do that, right? We're not pastors. We're not, spiritual leaders. Let the pastors do that. Well, the pastor can here, but the pastor can't in your own home. And what you're allowing to happen in your own home and your failure to know what your responsibility is as a Christian parent and the spiritual warfare that's going on. Yeah, you could be rebuking demons all day long about your job and your finances and your health, but you're neglecting your children? You're neglecting what's happening with your children? You're neglecting looking into your child's life and finding out, okay, what is going on here that I am not seeing? How can you not ask God to show you what is hidden? That's what He told us to do. Ask and I'll show you what's there.
And we have an obligation as parents, as aunts, as uncles, as grandparents, as church members, to be educated on this so that when people come to us and talk about the things that are happening in their families like this, like these types of child and online enticement things, that we have some knowledge on that. So that's why we're incredibly grateful that the pastor gave us the opportunity to talk about these type of things.
And nothing happens by coincidence, right? We knew we were going to be presenting this, and all of a sudden now he's talking about curses and blessings. And you're like, okay, that's just more confirmation. So what can we do? First of all, acknowledge that every single day we're in spiritual warfare. That's not a question. Just because you don't see the devil standing in front of you don't mean that the devil's not standing in front of you. Doesn't mean that the devil's not walking into the church, walking into your home. The Bible talks about how when Jesus was in the synagogues, the demons would start freaking out, right? They were in the church. How long had they been in that church and nobody knew? Jesus knew, and they knew because when He showed up, they knew. These strong boundaries. We are so ingrained, and it's unfortunate, that we want to be friends to our children because we don't want to be alienated, right? Our children, they come an age where they push us away. They no longer need us. They think that they know how the world is, and we're old, and we're antique, and we're old-fashioned, and we wear old clothes, and we're still on Facebook, and they're on the new high zoot thing, right? And, we try to be cool, but we're not. Well, some of us are. I'm still cool. So we want to be friends to our children. Well, God didn't call you to be a friend to your child. God called us to be a parent to our child. And what does that mean? It means that when bad times comes, if you don't have authority in your own home over your own child, your child will have authority over you. And if you're allowing your child to see you in the midst of your sins and in the midst of what you're allowing into your home, and you're watching these TV programs of adultery and fornication, and it's glorifying this and the sexuality and these, all of the craziness that's going on and all of the drama that's happening here, and you're still coming to church and you're still, doing your thing, that conflict is opening up doors for the enemy to step right in. And your children, they don't understand this. How are they supposed to understand this? That conflict of, what am I going to tell my mom and dad? Okay, so you're a hypocrite because you look at this and tell me don't look at this, and you do this and tell me don't do this? No, if you're doing it, I'm going to do it too. I'm just not going to tell you so I don't get in trouble, because I know what's going to happen if I get in trouble, right? It builds this confidence and this defiance in our children. And this is now where you start seeing your parents' fear of being segregated from their children and wanting to become a friend. So we start doing compromises. Right? You find your kid doing something wrong, and you try to punish them, and all of a sudden now they're flexing on you. You try to take their phone, you try to, you're not going out, you're not doing this. Oh, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. Oh, if you don't let me, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to tell blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get OCS involved in here. And then as parents, we're like, okay, well hold on. Let's try to figure this out. I could tell you, as a police officer, when my son flexed on me, I stripped his room down to nothing. He had a mattress and a pillow. I took the doors off the hinges and said, okay, my house, let's see how far you're going to get as a 13-year-old living out there. My daughter at 16 decided she was going to run away as a police officer in Alaska, in Anchorage. Like, I can't find you? That's my job. No, she's going to run away. Okay. Packed up all of her stuff, bagged it up, and told her, okay, before the phone gets disconnected, because it's my phone and I'm paying for this line, your stuff is going to be going to Covenant House, where I'm going to donate your clothes and everything you have to those that really need, because apparently you did not need. So good luck with that. And if you ever get the chance, drop the phone back off, because it is my property. She was back within the day, and she ended up keeping her stuff. We laugh about it now, but oh my God. We have to be educated on what's going on. Okay, this is what we're doing today, right? We're educating you, letting you guys know this is what's going on. The enemy loves ignorance. He loves deceit. He loves to hide, right? He knows that as Christians, if he shows his ugly face, we're going to start rebuking, we're going to start praying, we're going to start going to the pastors, we're going to start going to the ministers, help me, pray for me, intervene in my family. The enemy doesn't want that, right? So what does he do? He stays calm, he stays quiet, he keeps us ignorant, he keeps us thinking everything is okay. We start seeing the red flags. We see it in our children. We see the defiance. When sin sets in, it leaves tracks. It's never subtle. When your child is on a path that they shouldn't be on that path, you're going to see it, because the spirit in them that God has put in them and what you've instilled in them is going to start being conflicted. It's going to start manifesting. And the enemy in that battle within them, that's where you see the rage towards parents. That's where you see the rebellion towards parents, because they're conflicted themselves. They don't know how to deal with this. They know they have a desire to do this. They have a desire to be this way, but they also know in their heart, I'm wrong. They know there's a God. We talk about Christ coming soon. We talk about, don't get caught living that life of sin, because you're not going to be able to deal with the consequences. They know this. They know the consequences that are coming. They know that when they send that picture, if we're talking about a 5, even a 4-year-old, there is already an innate ability to know what's right and wrong. But when you're at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know you don't need to be sending that picture. You know nothing good is going to happen when you send that picture. Why do they continue to do it? It's just the enemy playing with their mind and drawing them back into that life. And you did it one time, nothing happened. It's just like drugs, You took a sip of alcohol, you didn't die. You took, more of a sip, you got a little drunk, but you didn't die. You smoked a little weed, you didn't die. Before you know it, you're shooting up, and you are dying, right? It starts little by little. It's insidious. The enemy sneaks in. He just doesn't come blasting through the door for the most part.
We want to leave a couple minutes for questions.
Yes.
And I told
I'm
you,
sorry.
the Puerto Rican's coming out.
Puerto Ricans,
So,
and this is my thing. I know, you're absolutely right. This is why we work so well together. She is organized, I am all over the map, but this is my passion. It's not in solving a crime is relatively easy. We have the evidence, God's given us the skills, we have everything that we need to solve that crime. And even when it's hidden by the enemy, God shines his light on it, peels it like a stinky onion and shows us what's hidden in there. But the true battle is not with these individuals who are the predators. The true battle is with the original predator who is out to destroy, steal. I mean, like I said, he's going to devastate our lives. He's going to devastate our family. That's the negative side. The good thing that we have to say, that we all know, there is nothing that could happen to us. There is nothing that could happen to our children that God can't change and make new, right? God can change the past. And when I say that, I am literal. What is a trauma to a child and what is a trauma to a family, when we put it before God, he makes it go away so like it never happened. And that's changing the past. That's something no human can do. So if this has happened, if there are families that are struggling with this, or just understand, the enemy is going to try to bring this to your home. We are victors in Christ. Victory is ours. And no matter how much it hurts, Christ will carry us through, and he will return what the enemy has taken from us.
these are just a couple resources that we have for you. It doesn't take away from what we need to do as parents and talking to our kids and things like that. Some of these are for more younger kids. Some of these are parental controls, things that you can put on your kids' phones. Some of them cost money. I would just encourage you with some of these. They can all do different things. You have to go online and take a look at them and that type of thing. The one thing I just want to say real quick before we take questions, if anybody has them, is my life before the Bureau, in terms of working with offenders, was working with men who committed crimes mostly against children. And I want to say that, I want to make sure that I say this and acknowledge this. Christ died just as much for Chris Carmichael as he did for me and as he did for you. And we know, statistically speaking, we know that there are men and women. There are women who do this too. We cannot just say this is a man's issue. There are women in churches and men in churches that are struggling with this, that are struggling with thoughts that they know are not from God, thoughts that they know they need to work on. And so I just say that if that is something that is touching home to you and something that you are struggling with, I can't tell you the number of people that we have talked to when we have gone out to arrest them and they have said, I wish I had somebody that I could have talked to about this. So there are people, there are plenty of counselors and pastors and other people that you can talk to about this type of thing if you're struggling with it. So I want to make sure that I address that and say that as well. We went to 8:30. We didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but we can certainly answer a few questions if anybody does have them, or certainly privately at some point as well if it's something that you don't want to talk about openly. All right. Oh, one question. Yes.
So after a predator is caught, convicted, how long they lock up? And then after being, after they serve their time, is there, besides child or the predator registry, is there somewhere a parent can look up, see who, if they're out?
There is. So and it's a little different whether it's a person is charged between the state or the federal system, but both systems have websites and have things that you can sign up for to get notifications when an offender is released. If they are on the sex offender registry, like in Alaska, you can Google Alaska Sex Offender Registry and look up your neighborhood, look up a particular person, and it will tell you. The length of sentences varies. It really does between different types of crimes. For example, like production of child pornography, which you talked about, somebody trying to get a child to produce images or getting them to actually make images. Federally, that's a mandatory minimum, 15 years. They will not serve less than 15 years. And then usually, it's usually more, but when they get out, then there's some type of supervised release or like parole. The state system, it really varies between state and federal, but there are ways, if you have been a victim of a crime, there's an organization called Victims for Justice, which can help you make sure that you're set up on to get those kind of notifications to know when somebody's getting out. Any other questions?
Yes, how do you know if you're too strict on a child? I'm trying to be, me and my ex-wife is trying to be the best parents that we could be, and we monitor them. We're on them about everything. They're making great grades in school, but sometimes they feel like we are helicopter parents. And, you know, we always fall back and saying that, hey, we're just trying to protect you from this crazy world. And fortunately, I've never experienced any trauma in my life. My wife has growing up, or my ex-wife has growing up, so she's very maybe overbearing on about certain things. How do you know if you're doing too much to protect your
So
child?
I would say, first of all, we always go before Christ and ask him for his wisdom and his guidance, right? That's our prayer. You know, help me to raise this kid that I want to strangle sometimes and not send him to you before it's time. So that's the first step as Christians that we need to do, right? And then the second step is you're doing it. You're not scared. So if we condition our children that this is my house, I love you, you live here, you're my son, you're not my friend, you're my daughter, you're not my friend, my job is to help and protect you. This is what that means. I will come into your room, I will look through your things because I bought those things. I will go through your phone, there won't be passwords on your phone, and if there are, I'll take the phone. That is seen as being too strict nowadays in the world. Your child is not your friend today, but your child will be a friend when they grow up. And they're going to finally say, man, I really understood. And I thank you for what you did because I was headed down this path. I was doing that. Had you not caught me doing this, I would probably not be here today. So the fear of if we're too strict, we're too strong, and every other parent's not that way, and the world is letting them do what they want to do, and they feel that, you know, we as parents are stealing their rights, that's a lie from the enemy. They're your children. They don't have that ability to think and do whatever they want to at this time in their life. That's our job to do that for them, right? So it sounds like you're doing exactly what you need to do. Will there be struggles? Absolutely, absolutely. That rebellion, that disobedience, that testing, you know, I'm going to see how far I can push that. Hey, that's going to happen. You did it. Everybody here did it, you know, it's going to happen. We're going to write it out in the name of Jesus Christ and putting them in his hands, and we're going to see, we're going to reap that reward of our children.
Yep. We'll do one more question.
I just have a quick question. We know that sex offenders are required to register in the state that they committed that crime in. What about when they move to another state? What resources are out there for the residents to know that they have now moved to their state or community?
They are supposed to register in the state that they move to as well. And there's a national sex offender registry. So the same way that you can look up Alaska, you can look up in a national registry as well. I don't know what the website is offhand, but you can Google that. So they have to register doing that as well. And if they fail to register, they can go back to jail for that. So it's a matter of finding that website. You can do it two ways. You can find the website in the state that you think they moved to, or you can look up that national registry as well. And there's actual departments or sections or units in larger police departments that are focused on the sex offender registry. In most states also, the U.S. Marshal Service which we wouldn't think the U.S. Marshals, but they also have units that work on the sex offender registry and compliance. So that's also a resource that you could reach out to, is the U.S. Marshal Service.
Though there are some convictions that will not have you as a lifetime sex offender.
true.
So you may have to register for 10 years, and after 10 years, if you don't get in trouble again, you no longer are considered a sex offender or have to register.
So, all right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
When you said that just now,
Mhm.
does that mean their names, like if they serve that time, that 10 years or whatever it is, does their name mysteriously disappear from the registry, or does it still be there? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
I
I would
would
guess that it disappears.
I would imagine it would, because they're no longer required to do that.
I think. I'm guessing. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a sex offender.
All right. Well, I know it's late. We went a little bit over, but thank you all very, very much.